You want to know the biggest issue with modern COD Zombies? It's been way too homogenized. Everything just feels the same, and that's why it's gotten stale. There are no shortage of issues with the modern Zombies formula. I've been critical of it, a lot of the community's been critical of it, but I've been trying to find one overarching theme as to why modern Zombies just isn't as satisfying as what we had back in the day. A lot of people say it's Warzone-ification, but in reality, most of the modern Zombies mechanics that we dislike aren't from Warzone. But it was a few months ago, shortly after the release of the Tomb, that I figured out what the overarching issue is. Things just feel the same, both from match to match and map to map. Now, just a quick note, when I say modern Zombies, I'm specifically talking about everything after Black Ops 4, and when I talk about classic Zombies, I'm referring to everything before Black Ops 4. Meanwhile, BO4 itself sort of exists in its own weird transitory space that holds similarities to both, but doesn't really strongly identify with either. I'm also mainly going to be focusing on BO6, but 99% of what I'm about to say also applies to Cold War. But the maps in modern Zombies are just unexciting. I'm not even joking when I say that I barely felt any excitement for the Shattered Veil prior to its release. And I will say, it is a fun map. It's probably the best map in BO6 and definitely better than all the maps in Cold War. But I don't think it did enough to really separate itself from the other maps in modern Zombies. And I think one part of that is the way that Treyarch is handling side quests. People like to praise the amount of side quests in this game, with even Treyarch themselves using it as a marketing tool, stating how Terminus has the most amount of side quests out of any map, which I don't know if that's actually the highest amount we've ever received, but I certainly don't doubt it either. The problem is that the rewards are shallow. Most of them just give standard rewards like salvage, a free perk, high-tier guns, things of that sort. While I'm glad these are here, it doesn't massively change how the map plays. Older maps had unique rewards that were useful throughout the match. On Terminus, there's only two unique rewards, those being Mega Stuffy, which is temporary and a one-time use thing, and the Cursed Talisman, which is permanent but more of a liability than an asset. A Thorella on Liberty Falls is temporary in much the same way. Now, Citadel de Moor makes a step in the right direction with the incantations, which are useful, unique, and last the whole match. I like this, and I wish we had more of it. Same goes for the golden armor on the Tomb. It's nice, and it does help to set the map apart, but there needs to be more of this sort of thing, and unfortunately, Treyarch is focused more on pushing global mechanics, which makes it so that each map feels very samey. Equipment and score streaks are an excellent example. We used to have map-specific equipment like Gersh devices, Matryoshka dolls, Lil Arnie's, music boxes, the Hell's Retriever, etc. That's gone in modern Zombies. In modern Zombies, if they add a new equipment type, it has to go on all the maps through zombie drops and the crafting table, whereas the older maps would use it as a reason to not only play different maps, but to get people to interact with them as well. You wouldn't always get Lil Arnie's from the box, so it was special when you did get them, and it gave you a reason to use the mystery box. Something like the music boxes or the Hell's Retriever wouldn't always be obtained on every match, which made it special when you did get it. Now that's gone because you can get everything on every map by crafting it or having it drop from a zombie. Same thing goes for score streaks. The Mangler Cannon would have been really cool to have as a specialist weapon unique to Liberty Falls or Terminus, but instead it's just a standard score streak. The same thing goes for the Mutant Injector. It would have been much better off as a side quest reward similar to the Spider Bait on Zetsubo. Instead, it's a streak that is on every map that is very easily obtainable, which homogenizes the gameplay as literally every high round strategy in this game makes heavy use of it on every map. And that's another thing. Black Ops 3, the game that first introduced specialists, was the only game to have map-specific specialists that you had to obtain on the map by doing a quest of some sort, or obtaining it through the mystery box. This was something else that helped each map feel special that was taken away when future installments just let you choose your specialist through the create-a class or the loadout system. And it also let them go crazy with the specialist, considering that you have to obtain it, which makes it more rewarding when you do get it. Nowadays, they have to be balanced around you being able to spawn with it which is why the specialist abilities in Cold War and BO6 are so fucking lame. Additionally, because it's the same across all the maps, most people are just gonna try out all the different specialist abilities, pick their favorite one, which in the case of BO6, for most people, that's gonna be Aether Shroud, and then just stick with that. But having map-specific specialists made each map much more unique and added a lot of content to those maps. One more thing that homogenizes the maps are the special enemies. Older games had vastly different special enemies for each map, usually something new that fits the map. BO6 in particular, however, seems content to just reuse the same enemy types across maps. The vermin are on every map, the parasites are on every map except Liberty Falls, the amalgams are on every map except Liberty Falls, the doppelgasts are on every map since they were introduced on Citadel, and it's just fucking tiring seeing the same enemy types repeated over and over. It's why I find the toxic zombies on Shattered Vale to be a breath of fresh air, considering that they fit the map and provide a unique challenge, assuming of course that they aren't spam for the rest of the maps in this game. But otherwise, the only other map-specific enemies in BO6 are the Abominations, Shock Mimics, and Elder Disciples, all of which are just slightly tweaked enemies that we saw in Cold War, or in the case of the Abomination, directly ripped from Cold War. I liked having enemies that could provide unique map-specific challenges like George Romero, the Pentagon Thief, Marguas, the Gladiators on 9, and so on. Even when enemies were reused in the older games, they weren't reused this much in such a short span of time. I mean, take the dogs for instance, by far the most commonly recurring enemy in all of Zombies. They were introduced on Shino Numa, and then they returned in Durice and Kino, but after that, we didn't see it again until Moon in Black Ops 1, and even then, they only showed up in Area 51. In Black Ops 2, they only showed up on the Green Run survival maps, and even then, that's only if you explicitly enable them through custom games. In BO3, they only showed up on Der Eisendrache, as well as remasters of maps that had them to begin with. Then BO4 had them on the Aether maps, but not the Chaos maps, and then Cold War had them on Firebase Z. So even though the dogs are on a lot of maps, they aren't really used for more than like 1 or 2 maps at a time before they're put away for several maps and they don't show up for a while. I honestly can't think of any enemy that has been repeated this frequently, this often in such a short span of time, besides maybe the Catalyst from BO4 Zombies, but even then, that was only on the Chaos maps. And even on the Chaos maps, there were still plenty of unique enemies on each one that still managed to set it apart. Let's now shift our attention away from map-to-map homogenization and focus more on match-to-match homogenization. A big part of this is the weapons. Let me walk through a thought experiment that ended up becoming the basis for this video. If I were to ask you to name me all of the guns from different COD Zombies games from memory, I bet you would be able to name most of them from memory for World at War through BO4, but would miss a substantial amount in Cold War and BO6. In fact, I actually decided to try this for myself, and it really puts into perspective how poor the weapons sandbox is in modern Zombies. Before I go through my results though, let me explain the rules of this thought experiment for those who might want to try this at home. First of all, you are not allowed to open the games or any resource like the COD Zombies wiki that lists the weapons. Second, this is only for regular weapons, so no wonder weapons or equipment. Third, if I can't remember the name of a gun, but I can remember some other defining characteristic, such as what it looks like, then I'll count it as being remembered. This will also extend to things like misspellings. Finally, DLC melee weapons in the newer games won't be counted, since I don't think it's reasonable to expect people to remember all those, since they pretty much function the same. Now, DLC guns and base game melee weapons will still count though. So, if you want to try this for yourself before I reveal my results, now is your chance to pause the video and try it for yourself. So anyways, let's go ahead and discuss my results, starting with World at War. There are 26 different guns in that game's Zombies mode, and I remembered 24 of them. The only 2 that I forgot were the Bar, as well as its bipod variant from Varuk. Up next we have BO1 Zombies, which has 30 different guns, of which I remembered 28. The only 2 that I forgot were the Ballistic Knife and the Crossbow. Black Ops 2 steps things up to having 45 guns total, of which I remembered 39. The only ones I forgot to mention are the Mauser, the SVU, the Scar, the MP40, the ballistic knife, and the death machine. Up next is Black Ops 3 with a whopping 55 guns, of which I remembered 50. The only ones I forgot are the Mauser, the Peacekeeper Mark II, the Galil, the Bootlegger, and the MG08. Up next we have Black Ops 4, which has 53 guns, of which I remembered 44. The ones I forgot were the Argus, the Peacekeeper, the Switchblade, the Stingray, the M16, the Javelina, the Tiger Shark, the Ballistic Knife, and the Reaver C86. I am a little surprised I forgot as many guns from this game as I did, but I will say that all the guns I did forget are DLC guns. Now we get to Black Ops Cold War, and this is where things really start to hit the fan. This game has 51 guns, of which I only remembered 29. So the ones I forgot were the QBZ, the Groza, the Farah, the C58, the EM2, the Grav, the Vargo, the Milano, the Bullfrog, the MAC-10, the LC-10, the OTS-9, the Tech-9, the Lappa, the UGR, the Carve, the MG82, the Pellington, the Tundra, the Swiss, the Marshall, and the Ironhide. I should also note that little rule I added about not needing to remember the name if I could remember some other defining trait really saved me here, because otherwise I would have forgotten a lot more guns than I did. I should also note that in the case of Cold War, I completely hallucinated a sniper rifle that didn't actually exist in the game. And finally, we have Black Ops 6. Now, I should note that I did this before the release of Season 3, so any guns that were added in there were not counted towards this. So, of the 44 guns that were in the game at the time, I remembered 28 of them. The ones I forgot were the Ames, the Tonto, the PP-919, the PU-21, the GPMG, the SWAT, the Zarkov, the AEK, the DM-10, the Cypher, the Maelstrom, the Fang, the TR-2, the AMR Mod 4, the Siren 9mm, and the D-13 Sector. So I took all these percentages of weapons that I remembered and plotted them on a graph using Seaborn, and this is the result. From World at War through Black Ops 4, I got 83% of the guns remembered at a minimum, meaning I would remember at least 5 out of 6 guns in each of the games. But in Cold War and BO6, that is a fairly sharp decrease, with only 56.9% and 63.6% remembered in each game respectively. And I know somebody's going to say, well, maybe you just didn't remember as much from those games because they're newer. Well, to that I say, Black Ops Cold War has been out for 5 years, and I've sunk hundreds of hours into that game's zombie mode. Meanwhile, Black Ops 6 is the most recent Zombies entry, and as such, it's one of the most played Zombies games for me as of late. So, why are the weapons not so memorable in these new games? Well, to answer that, let me explain how the guns were balanced in the older games. There are 3 main pillars upon which those guns were balanced: killing potential, point earning potential, and accessibility. A weapon like the MPL in Black Ops 1 or the MP5 in Black Ops 2 was highly accessible and earned a lot of points, but its killing potential wasn't that good past the first couple rounds. A gun like the SVU from Black Ops 2 was very accessible and had a lot of killing potential, but it wouldn't get you that many points unless you had a specific perma-perk. The Galil had great killing potential and point earning potential, but it wasn't super accessible since you had to pull it from the box. Depending on what point you are in the game, these different pillars will matter more or less, and that leads to variety, as you're frequently swapping out your guns in the middle of the match. Now, the first of these pillars to fall was point earning potential, and it was actually Black Ops 4 that did this rather than modern Zombies. This was because of the change to the point system, which gives you 90 points per zombie, with 30 bonus points for a headshot and 60 for a melee kill. Now, the concept of point guns no longer exists due to every gun having the same point earning potential, save for weapons like the Strife or Vapor, which have enhanced melee attacks with their respective operator mods. This really fucked over SMGs in particular, since their damage was outclassed by assault rifles, which used to be made up for by their point earning potential, but without that, there really isn't much reason to use them. The Cordite, for example, was a box-only SMG, which meant it wasn't really accessible, and it didn't really do a lot of damage, but it might have been able to make up for that with point earning potential, but without that, I pretty much never used the damn thing once I got it gold. And this definitely hurt the weapons sandbox, but having said that, I do still think there were enough of those other 2 pillars present in BO4 for there to be some mid-match variety. Modern Zombies, however, not only didn't fix this, but it actually made it slightly worse due to devaluing melee, which previously was a reward due to it being a more risky kill to get, but in Cold War it's worth the same amount as a headshot, and in BO6 it's worth less than a headshot. So that pillar is still gone, but on top of that, it also knocked down the pillar of accessibility, and that is because of the loadout system. Instead of starting with a dinky little pistol and having to find better guns on the map through the wall or the mystery box, you can now choose to spawn in with literally any weapon that isn't a wonder weapon. The problem here is now I don't have any reason to go hit the mystery box or buy guns off the wall, because I can just spawn in with whatever gun that I want to use. Sure, in the older games I might aim for specific weapons from the box, but I might not always get them due to box luck, and instead I would have to improvise by using a different gun that the box gave me, or by buying something off the wall. And because the distinctions between weapons were more meaningful, that led to a lot of match variety, because no two matches are going to play the same. But when I can choose to spawn in with whatever gun I want, that doesn't really occur, because now I'm just gonna keep that weapon and run with that the entire match. Now, I know some fan of Modern Zombies is going to say, well, if you want that, then just pick a weaker gun to start off with, and then just buy guns off the wall or from the mystery box and you'll get that older experience. Except that brings us to our third pillar, killing potential. And the main culprit behind that is the rarity system, which on face value, the idea makes sense. It makes it so that your loadout tier weapons aren't too overpowered, and on top of that, it gives the potential for every gun in the game to shine, which on paper should lead to more variety, right? Except now you've made it so that pretty much every gun now feels the damn same. I got gold on all 7 of the base game assault rifles in Black Ops 6, and I can safely say that only one of them really stands out, and that is the Goblin Mark II, and that's simply because it's semi-automatic instead of full auto, but the rest of them, I mean, they didn't really feel all that different. And that's because how good or bad a gun is no longer tied to the weapon itself, but rather it's tied to what rarity and pack-a-punch level it is. And that brings us back to the loadout system, because even if I choose to spawn in with a weaker gun like the Strider 22 or the 9mm PM, it's no longer a case of, oh, I've got a weak gun and now I've got to seek out better weapons in order to survive. Now it's just a case of, well, I guess I just gotta use this less fun gun for a bit. And at that point, you might as well just choose to spawn in with whatever gun you want to use that match. And what's even funnier is that the issue they were trying to solve with this, that being everybody converging onto a single dominant strategy, wasn't even solved with this system, because every high rounder is going to use a combination of the map's wonder weapon, the GS-45, and the LR-762. Because objectively speaking, those are the weapons that are going to deal the most damage when high rounding. Now, sure, even in the older games, there were certain weapons that were sought after for high rounding, that is true. But the fact that this new system didn't fix that when that was clearly what the aim of it was, while also creating a bunch of new problems with early and mid-game weapon variety, just goes to show you how terrible a lot of these new systems are. Let's rewind a bit to the point system. Now, we already talked about why it fucks over the weapon sandbox, but there's another issue separate from that, and that's the fact that the amount of points being fixed per zombie means that there's not much variety in the amount of points you have at specific points during the match. I'm sure anybody who's played a zombies game with the classic point system knows about the concept of point maxing. Under ideal conditions, you'll try to shoot a zombie as many times as possible without killing them, and then go in for a melee kill to finish them off to maximize the amount of points you get per zombie. But depending on the circumstances of the match, you might not always get that ideal amount. If you get swarmed and surrounded, you might have to temporarily change your priority from maximizing points to killing zombies so that you don't die. And depending on what weapons you might get off the wall or from the mystery box, because weapon variety was actually a thing that existed back in the older games, that would also play a pretty big factor into how many points you get. Like, getting the ray gun or a wonder weapon early on is sweet because it means you have something to effectively kill the zombies and you don't have to worry about spinning the box for it later, but using it a lot during the early rounds is going to delay your progression through the map significantly. And when the amount of points you have at any specific point during the match is different from game to game, that means you're making a lot more dynamic decisions, which leads to a lot more replay value. But the modern system means that the amount of points I have at any specific point isn't really changing by any significant amount. Pretty much the only time that it will in the modern games is if you happen to get a double points at a really good time. And even if you do get a double points, it's still not as impactful because the points are still capped. And when the amount of points you have at any given time during the match is about the same, that means your progression through the map is always about the same. Whereas in the older games, major points of progression like getting Jug or getting Pack-a-Punch could change by several rounds depending depending on what occurs throughout the match. This is why I can play 10 matches of Origins back to back and get 10 completely different experiences each time, but if I were to play something like Terminus 10 times back to back, it feels like the same experience each time. And when you combine that with the fact that a lot of the maps play similarly to each other, as explained in the earlier sections of this video, it doesn't really bode well. And this is why I don't really feel that much desire to go back and keep replaying Black Ops 6. Make no mistake, I do enjoy the game, and when I am playing it, it's pretty fun. I'm not trying to argue that BO6 is a completely terrible game, but I don't really think about my experience with the game like I do with BO2 or BO3 or any of the other older games. And here's another thing. Ever since Black Ops 6 released, I have felt zero desire to go back to Cold War, and as a matter of fact, I haven't even booted up the game ever since BO6 released. And that makes me wonder if the same thing is gonna happen to me with BO6 once Black Ops 7 releases. Because even during its life cycle, I don't really find myself playing BO6 all that much. I mean, sure, I'll pick it back up for a bit whenever there's a new content drop, and it doesn't last. Like, I played quite a bit of this game when it first launched, but then I stopped until Citadel de Mor released, and I played that for a bit, for, you know, a few days, but then after that, put it back down, didn't really touch it again until the release of the Tomb, played that for like a week, then just put the game down until the Shattered Veil released, which I played for like a week and a half, but then once I finished the Easter egg, I just didn't really feel that much urge to go back to it, and now the only reason I've picked it back up now is because I need gameplay footage for this video. And even when I did play it, I'd play like a match, maybe two, and then just turn the game off and do something else. It's not like some of the older games where I could legitimately lose track of time because of how much fun I was having. And I know somebody is going to say that it's because I'm older and I have more responsibilities and shit to worry about and I just don't have as much time to play video games, and maybe that's a small part of it, but it's at least 90% because of the game. And the reason I know this is because of Infinite Warfare. A game with the Zombies mode that I honestly did not give the love and attention it deserved back in the day, but a couple months ago, I picked it up for PC because I didn't own the DLC maps on Xbox. It was on sale, so I figured I could at least give the other ones a try. And yet, despite that, I've literally just been playing Spaceland outside of 2 very short matches of Raven the Redwoods where I died early. But otherwise, the only map I've been playing from that game is fucking Spaceland, and I've been having an absolute blast. Even when I kept dying, I still kept booting up new matches over and over, and I was having a blast. It's fun, has a lot of unique content, and the underlying mechanics are just so much better than modern Zombies. It's basically everything I've been asking for. And I severely regret not giving this game the love and attention it deserved back in the day. Like, I'm being 100% serious here. If you're somebody that loves the older games, like BO3 in particular, and just can't stand the modern formula, but you haven't played Infinite Warfare, give it a try. I guarantee you will like it. But overall, I'd say that's what the main issue is with the modern Zombies formula. Not just the fact that it's very easy compared to some of the older games, but also because it kills replay value by homogenizing the gameplay. And hopefully future installments can make changes to improve upon this, because I really do want the series to do better. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, that's gonna be about it for this video, so if you enjoyed, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more. Anyways, that's it. Peace!